All right. Allow your eyes to close. Allow yourself to be present, to feel your body. Feel your breath. Imagine you're going along and you sit down somewhere, and all of a sudden, for no reason, your memory stops. You forget your name. You forget where you are. You forget your history. You forget your stories. Here you are. What is it that's present? Something's still present. What was present before you were given a name? Something.
Recording in progress.
What's present here without the name? Without the history? Without the thoughts about the past or the future? Just this presence. What is this? Could I possibly be my name? Then what happens if it changes? Or it disappears? Who am I? Do you remember what happened Tuesday a week ago at this exact moment? It disappeared. And yet I'm still here. Who am I? There's not a single cell in this body that was here on the day of your birth. And yet here you are. Who am I? What is it that's been here constantly throughout, that's never changed, that is not changing now? What is watching this moment? Thoughts come and go, and yet here you are. Feelings come and go, and yet here you are. Stories come and go, and yet here you are. What is it that's never changed? This which has no name, this which has no gender, this which has no boundaries, this which is always present, even though we get distracted by the stories. Every single story is a fiction of the mind. Every single story. Who is it who watches the stories, who sees the stories? Just come and go. Where is this when you forget that you're in a story and you get really lost in it? Like watching a movie and you forgot that you're watching the movie. Where's this? It's always here. This presence. Which is much more true of what we are than the name, than the story, than the history, than the imaginary future. This. It's always here. You actually don't have to go looking for it. All you do is let go of the stuff that's taking you away from this awareness. And so for tonight, we are in this together. We're always in it, but right now we're present together with the intention of being in this together, because it helps us anchor into this more deeply. Now, you can't anchor into yourself any more deeply than you are because you're the infinite. What we do is we anchor our attention, our awareness into the awareness of being aware, which gradually realigns our identification with the true nature of what we are. We're not the story, we're not the thoughts, we're not the feelings, we're not the emotions, we're not the physical body, we're not our all the things we own. And we're sure as hell not the number of likes we get on your favorite social media platform.
Oof.
So, with that said, all right. So nice to be with you all. Welcome, Leah. Got a good one tonight. They're all good. All of Ram Dass's talks are good. The one tonight is going to be about embracing our humanity. I had this experience, this real clarity where I was in this perfect balance place in myself, was very much, ever since, in fact, I would say for most of the time still am. And this balance place is where I feel connected to the divine, and I'm connected to my body, and I'm connected to my humanity, to the divine and the humanity. And then what am I? I'm the nexus of heaven and earth, of the divinity and the humanity. When we're in that balance place of ourself,
That's right.
0 point. And everything then can flow through us at that point. For so many of us, because of the pains of living at times, we try to push away all of that. That throws us off balance. Or we go into denial of the divinity, and that throws us off balance. So Ram Dass is going to talk about his journey of that as well, because he really went off. There are probably few people who've had an incarnation who managed to get as high as Ram Dass got, and it wasn't enough, and which led him to very important realization. So let me bring that in. It's about half hour. You may feel called to take notes about some of this, maybe. There's a lot of good stuff here. Or Just sit and absorb and enjoy.
Take notes on the video.
Well, it's being recorded anyway.
Exactly.
Okay, why don't you all mute yourself?
The only way I can justify this business that I'm in of speaking to people like this as part of my role is I'm not an enlightened being. I am at some level, but I am not fully consciously an enlightened being. But I'm sort of a mouth for a process that a lot of us are sharing. Some of us came into it at one moment, and some of us came into it at another moment, some in one way and some in another. But I really just say things, talk about changes that are going on that I think that most of you will find very familiar. Although you may have shortcut some of these, I might have done them the most circuitous and painful route. And what I did was I started to just list different things that I thought had changed in my perceptions over these years. And I thought I'd just share some of those with you, because I think they are as rich an inner statement, an inner history, as we could expect of ourselves in this period of time. When I tried to do the 10-year business, that was hard because the meaning of time has changed as one major thing. Some of you may have noticed that. A year ago, I was 50 years old, and I've always gone to motels on my birthday because I don't like sort of that kind of hysterical fun that people have on celebrations usually. Sometimes it's real, but often it isn't. But this time was my 50th birthday, and I really wanted to milk it and see if there was something in there to really enjoy. So I called all these people, and I said it was my 50th birthday, and I had 4 parties. And we'd have cakes, and I'd bring champagne, or they'd have champagne, and I did one on television in New York, and they had a big birthday cake. And no matter how I milked it, I couldn't quite feel like I was any age. I mean, I have a 50-year-old body. This is a 1931 model right here. It's a foot decaying perfectly lawfully for a 31 model, just like I have a 74 MG. This is a 31 body. And so I was really celebrating the age of my vehicle at one level. Because I'd say that I'm at least 2 kalpas old on one plane. That's hundreds of thousands of years. Or else I'm newly born. Take your choice, because that's what it feels like. It feels like all and everything. I feel like every age. Years ago, I was very caught in specialness. I was what I now would call a phony holy. I was busy trying to be high for me and everybody else. I assumed that everybody wanted me to be high all the time. So I would prepare myself to be high in front of everybody. And there's a certain way you are when you're high. You know, you smile a lot and you're very benevolent, and a certain role, or the holy man role. And I took all the parts of me that didn't fit into that role, and I sort of shoved them under the rug so that I could be who everybody wanted me to be. Because I wanted to be that too. I really wanted to be Ram Dass. See, I had what was called vertical schizophrenia. I even had a name to go with each of my personalities. So there was Dick Alpert, and then there was Ram Dass. And Ram Dass would sit in front of a group of people and look out and just loved everybody and wanted nothing. And Dick Alpert was counting the house. And worse than that was that Dick Alpert was impersonating Ram Dass. somebody would come up and say, "Oh, Ramdas, thank you for your writings." And I'd hear Ramdas say, I don't know who I was, but I would hear Ramdas say, "Wouldn't you like to come up and see my holy pictures?" Well, that may seem funny to you, but it wasn't from inside, because what I felt was just a tremendous amount of hypocrisy in order to be what everybody wanted me to be. For those of you that are therapists, this just sounds like another case history, but that's... I once spoke at Einstein Medical School, Grand Rounds, medicals, the hospital, Einstein Hospital. And in New York, the young Turk psychiatrist brought me there. And they would have, at Grand Rounds, they would have a lecture presentation, and they'd alternate it with a case study. And I came in early. Those were the days when I was wearing robes, which looked like a dress, and beads. And I came in and I sat only cross-legged, and all the chairs had narrow arms, so I sat on the end of the conference table. And these old Viennese psychiatrists started to come in. And they, of course, concluded that they had read the schedule wrong. So I presented him as a case. It took them a while to figure out the case was presenting itself. Well, you see, what had happened was that the spiritual identity played right into my hands psychologically. Because psychologically, there were whole parts of my being that I was afraid of and that I didn't accept. And here I had a justification for getting rid of them by becoming holy. And I was using my spiritual journey psychodynamically in order to get myself free of things that I couldn't acknowledge in myself. But after a while, you begin to feel like you're standing on sand. You have to deal with the horror. You have to live with your own horror. And the predicament was that I was trying to live in the projections that other people were creating for me. But every now and then I had to be alone. And when I was alone, I go into very deep depressions, which I hid. And my theory was that if I did my sadhana hard enough, if I meditated deeply enough, if I opened my heart in devotional practices wide enough, sort of all that stuff would go away. But it didn't. And it has taken me a lot of years to be able to understand what the teaching was in all of this. I was busy going from the two into the one, from, you could say, dualism into non-dualism, from the multiplicity into the unity. All of yogic techniques are designed for that purpose. Yoga means union. And I could huff and puff in pranayama and control my breath to go into a trance state. And in that trance state, all of Dick Albert just had gone completely. But I always came down again. And down had a pejorative connotation for me. I kept wanting to get high. I didn't want to come down. And as you know, I had years of attempting, along with my friend Ralph Metzner and Tim Leary and others, at better living through chemistry. But I indeed did keep coming down. And even with yogic techniques, I did. Now, in the course of the years, I've developed a lot of very strange friends. And one of them is a being named Emmanuel. And Emmanuel is interesting because Emmanuel doesn't have a body. He's a being on another plane, and he speaks through a woman named Pat Rodegast. And I know some of you here have a difficult time accepting my friend Emmanuel. I mean, you'd accept any of my other friends, but somehow you say you have no prejudices about color, sex, religion. But bodies, somehow, if somebody doesn't have a body, you immediately don't know that you want to accept them. But I figure that's your problem, because he's my friend. And the way I figured is I'll take my teachings anywhere I can get them. Okay? I don't care whether you got a body or which kind it is. If you got a teaching, I want it. And Emmanuel had a good teaching. Let me read you one of the things he said to me. He said, you're here because you chose to be here, because this is a learning place. Each lifetime is a wonderful opportunity to expand your consciousness and to move closer, ever closer to your oneness with God. This happens in very small stages. First, oneness with self, oneness with your human community, then oneness with God. It cannot be done in one blinding flash. It would be too incomprehensible, too confusing. So be patient. When we choose to come back, we construct an embryo to hold within us the areas of distortion that we need to work on. Then we choose our infinite environment to act as a catalyst to bring out these areas. So you were where you needed to be as a very small child. So accept the distortions in you, because when you accept them, you can transform them. That's what life is about. You're here to find these areas of imperfection, to understand them, to love them, and to educate them into reality, which is truth, light, love. If in the transitional period you find things in yourself that are not perfect, don't blame yourself. Celebrate. So in effect, what Emmanuel said to me when I said to him, Emmanuel, what work do I have to do now? He said, Ramdas, you're in a school. Why don't you try taking the curriculum? He said, you took a human birth. You're so busy being holy. Why don't you try being human? Funny, I'd never thought of that. Isn't that far out? Because somehow being human was less than perfect. Even though I intellectually knew that form is no other than formless and formless is no other than form, and I knew that the manifestation was God made manifest. Everything was perfect out there except me. But original sin was going to have a last stronghold right here. So I said, okay, Emmanuel, here I go. I decided to just go and be human. Now, I'd already figured this out, really. I remember being drunk with Alan Watts in a Benedictine monastery one night, if you can handle that image. And Alan said, you know, the trouble with you, Dick, and you know you're going to get real truth at a moment like that. It's like 3 a.m. He says, you're too attached to emptiness. So with Alan and Emmanuel looking over my shoulder, I had already figured out that as long as I pushed anything in the universe away, I wasn't going to be free. And I saw that the game wasn't getting high, the game was being free. And that free included the highs and the lows. Free included it all and everything, as Gurdjieff said. Not, this is all God, except that. You just can't get stuck in those places. It's not good enough. That lovely line of G. Manly Hall, he who knows not that the Prince of Darkness is but the other face of the King of Light, knows not me, says God. And if you're going to aim towards one, you can't get stuck along the way at two. Emmanuel said, if you want to be free, you're going to have to embrace original sin. You're going to have to incorporate the darkness into your light. Now, because I had sort of steeped myself in a Hindu tradition of renunciation, which could produce liberated beings, but more often produces horny celibates. I'm going to get in trouble at some level for this kind of stuff. I got to watch out. I found that when I had so many years, I had pushed away so much part of my personality because I just kept denigrating the personality and saying, look, it's all, I called it body and fender repair work therapy. And I just had this feeling that somehow I looked and I said, in those days I said, look at all the great saints, they're all as neurotic as anybody else. It's just that it's kind of irrelevant. And so you don't have to change your neuroses, you just stop identifying with them. And you just make friends with them and they come by for tea. Because I realized, I'd been through years of psychoanalysis. And all I had done was Really, I just invested so much reality in my neurosis, there wasn't a chance they were going to go away. Because the analyst thought my neuroses were real because his were real. So we just kept reinforcing the reality of our identities. How could I be other than a patient? He was a doctor. There's only room for two of us in the room. So I found myself having opened up to relationship, and I was like a post-pubescent. And see, some years when you're doing, what I do is I live very spirally. I spend time sort of ram-dassing around the world. And then the toxicities build up and build up and build up until I begin to think it's real. And then I take time off. And I go to a monastery in Thailand, or I go to Bali and swim, or I go to Florence, Italy and hang out with Michelangelo. Or I do different things each year. So I was having a relationship this year. And I found myself sitting in the bathtub crying with jealous rage. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I thought, this couldn't be me. I mean, my God, Ramdas, what are you doing? How absurd. And there was this part of me that was giggling. And I was crying, and the pain was excruciating. You know what jealousy is. Somebody must know what jealousy is like. I mean, the pain's really, Now, there's a tricky point right here of what's happened with me, because, see if I can get this across. There's a thing called non-attachment, and then there's a psychodynamic called dissociation. And one often masquerades as the other, you see. So I was busy being non-attached. I'd say, there's depression. Ha, 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 ha. See? Now, that looked like non-attachment, but actually, you know that it was dissociation. See? And that was the first part. That was when I used to be phony about my personality. Then, when I started to open up to it, by the time I started to open up to it, I had developed something inside of me that was so deep and so rock-like, I guess. Although, yeah, rock-like. On the way, you develop a thing called the witness, like Uspensky in Search of the Miraculous, describing becoming self-remembering. Uspensky is walking down the street. Uspensky is turning left. Uspensky is and then Uspensky saw his tobacconist, and he remembered he needed tobacco, and 2 days later he remembered he was doing the experiment. Oh, I need tobacco. That was the end of the experiment. That's witnessing, and you can do that up to a certain point, but then the witness is just another part of your ego, really. It's just part looking at the other part. And finally, you witness the witness, and that's a kind of a meditative technique you turn in on yourself. And behind all that, there's just a place. You can't even call it a place. It's just like sky. It just develops this kind of a context, a frame of reference of isness. It doesn't have any quality to it. You can't say it's happy or sad or watchful, or it's not looking, but it's seeing. It just is. It's the Tao. It's the way. It's the... And there I was. What happened now when I was open to my personality stuff, really open to it with the full blast of it, I was no longer holding on to that space, but it was still there. It was there in a different way, though. It wasn't there to push away the pain. It was there along with the pain. Is that coming through? Can you hear what I'm talking about at all? Something that is still really coming out more clearly to me was that the movement from knowing the world through conceptual structures and knowing it another way, which we could use, the Western word we often use is intuitively. I have felt that the problems that we kept creating with our rational minds were only going to be solved by our intuitive connection to the universe. And I kept looking for intuitive training to connect with that deeper and deeper part of my being that just knows. It's not one that knows it knows. That's the frontal lobes. It just knows. It knows because it is. It is. It's like knowing how to make a fist. You don't know you know how to do it, but you do it. And when I was in that intuitive domain, everything in the universe is subject. When I'm in my analytic conceptual mind, the universe is object. Always thinking, I'm always one thought away from where the action is. So that I could see that my thinking mind was an instrument of it reinforced my sense of separateness. And that I didn't want to get rid of my thinking mind, but I wanted to have it around like, hey, you, I need you. Not, yes, yes, I wanted to change the thinking mind from a master into a servant so that I didn't have to think all the time, because I had always thought all the time, because I was paid for thinking all the time. So when I'd fly across the country in my airplane, I'd have a clipboard on my knee to write down important thoughts and a tape recorder to tape all my ideas, because that was my bread and butter. And it got very complicated for me, because as life gets as real as it is, it's very hard to rationally think through everything. It's awfully complicated. I had a dramatic example I've talked about in my lectures this year. A year ago, or a year and a half ago, I was in Benares in India, the city of dying. And a friend and I were going to the bathing ghats, to the sacred bathing area in the Ganges River, where you can bathe with all of the floating dead bodies and things. It's a very auspicious place to die, by the way, Benares. And as we were going there, we passed about, I don't know, I really don't know the number. I've changed the number at different times because I don't remember, but probably it was about 100, 125 lepers. And they all had begging bowls. And we shared our coins, my friend and I had about 20 coins, and there was 125 lepers. So I started down the line. Who am I going to give the coins to? Now my rational mind started in, well, let's see. That fellow is missing his arms, but that woman has her face eaten away. Do you suppose that's worth a rupee? I mean, can you hear how ghastly that is? Because I only had 20 coins, and there were 125 lepers. And I did this for about 3 coins. I mean, if you're young and you don't have any feet, on a score of 1 to 10? Okay. I'm using a grotesque example, but life is pretty grotesque. I mean, you're on the good guy mailing list too, you know. Somebody is, I can hear her out there. Finally, I just gave up. I just went on intuitive. I just went down the line looking people in the eye, and every now and then I'd hand out a coin. And the coins were over, and I was enjoying being with all these beings, and I didn't get into the whole business of guilt and judgment and all this stuff, which would have just destroyed the moment for me. It turns out they have a union and they share all their coins. I didn't know that, so the lesson was great for me, you know. And so I have been sort of really opening to my intuitive way of doing things. So I just respond much more whimsically without any reason for doing it particularly. Sure, I'll do that. No, I won't do that. Why? I don't know. Well, shouldn't you? No. If you can stand that original confrontation, you mean you're not being rational? No. You gotta really, have a cold eye at that moment. I mean, 'cause, you mean you trust, but don't you know what you're full of? Yeah, but behind that, I know. But you know you know? No. And you still trust? Yes. I don't know. I mean, you recognize this dialogue. It's a dialogue you have with yourself, actually. And it gets extraordinarily exciting when you just say, well, here we go. I'm going intuition. But the problem that I ran into for some years was that the doorway to the intuition is through the human heart. And I was trying to leap into cosmic love without dealing with emotionality, because emotionality was a little too human for me. And what I experienced was that there was, see how I can say this, that I had used pushing away my humanity to embrace my divinity. And then I wanted to be intuitive, but the intuition, the impeccable warrior intuitive action has to come from a blending of humanity and divinity. And until I could accept my humanity fully, my intuitions weren't going to be fully in harmony with the way of things. The paradoxes that I was stretching to deal with is that when you get into one plane, you look out and you say, we are all one. But it's my television set. The resolution of it is the Sufi statement, trust in Allah, but tie your camel. When I went into my sixth chakra, everything looked absolutely perfect to me. I could look at anything. I could look at suffering and see the way in which it was grace. I could see death as grace. It was a place that was so clear, but with that clarity, there was no warmth. It was the kind of clarity that if somebody falls down in front of you, you say, karma. But when I come down into my human heart, it would hurt so bad. Because the more you open up to the suffering of the universe, the easiest way to handle it is to go up. It's much harder to stay down and stay open. It's excruciatingly painful. And I began to feel that what my freedom was going to lie in was the creative tension of being able to see simultaneously the perfection and also to experience the pain. To see that there was nothing to do and to work as hard as I could to relieve suffering. To see it was all a dream and still live within the reality of it. That creative tension. And I felt that the place that I had to work finally, and I have to work, and I am working, is to get the fullness of the human heart. And I begin to feel like a character in The Wizard of Oz that has a tin heart. Because I saw human beings getting so lost in their emotionality that I just kept going up in order to, and embracing the kind of clear, crisp perceptions of the universe. People said, we love you and we think you're beautiful and you're very clear, but at some level, people would say to me, we don't trust you. And I heard what they were saying. They were saying they didn't trust me because they couldn't feel my heart. They couldn't feel my humanness. There's an image of a Buddha statue with a tiny smile at the edge of the lips, and it's known as the smile of unbearable compassion. It's a way in which you can open to how it all is, the horrible beauty of it all, and you can bear it. Not by deadening yourself, but by balancing. And what I'm experiencing is that as the faith has gotten deeper, not the beliefs, because beliefs aren't going to keep you warm on a cold night. That's too head trippy. The faith, the connection to that which you are at the deepest level, to the universe, to the oneness of all things. As that faith gets deeper and deeper, so you can dramatically, much more freely throw yourself into life. As long as the faith flickers, you've got to be very tentative about the way you go into life because you're always afraid you're going to lose your connection to the spirit. But when that faith is really strong, you can say, here I come, wow. And what I've experienced in the past few years, people come up and say, you know, Ramdas, you're really just human. But they're saying it with, it's an interesting thing what I had done psychodynamically. Because my personality felt so inadequate that what I was doing was becoming bigger than life. So everybody, what I did to everybody else was they'd sit down there and say, oh, look at Ramdas, we could never be like him. And now they look and they say, gee, he's just another guy. What do you know? And that freed other people. It was interesting that as I no longer wanted to play with that psychologically, the whole game of communication changed. It's a big one. It's a big one. It's a big one, embracing humanity. Not embracing humanity, embracing my humanity.
Okay. What spoke to you? Unmute yourself if you're going to talk.
What was interesting to me was he was talking about the witness, but then there's a witness that, or something that witnesses the witness.
Right.
And I'm still working on the witness.
That's okay. That's you always just go from where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
There's no ideal. Idealism is a tool of the ego to make you keep feeling like you're not good enough.
Nah, I'm not going to buy into that. But what a beautiful soul Ram Dass is. I really enjoyed that meditation. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, the thing that really, I've been to many of his talks. I've met him, read all his books. The thing that speaks to me the most is how honest he is about his own ways of struggling through his own process.
And he's funny.
And he's funny as hell. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, go ahead,
My
Dylan.
audio, my audio okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't write down a lot of notes, but what's been present for me is that balance between non-attachment and dissociation. Am I witnessing or am I spiritually bypassing? Am I in the isness or am I witnessing the witness as a technique? In order to not suffer, in order to not feel pain. But I love the idea of the isness, that blue sky is something that we don't push away the pain, but we are with the pain in that isness, to be with the pain. And I think the most peace I've ever felt in my life is not when I'm in this like spiritual high, but when I can be with my own suffering or other people's suffering, not in an unattached way, but I'm not so clenched.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Very clenched is another word for contraction, right? Hmm. Yeah. He said there was another talk he gave where he said, you don't go seeking out suffering. That's another tool of the ego. But when it's present, you welcome it.
Yeah, I'll hop in.
Yeah, go
Um,
ahead, Christina.
okay. Um, as usual, the timing of this message was perfect. It ties in very powerfully to the lessons I was receiving down in Peru and the things I've been working on since I came back. It's been a challenging process, but as always, for the greater good. The two things that caught me was something that was just mentioned here a moment ago is when are you detaching and when are you disassociating? And I'm not fully sure I understand the definition of each word technically, but I understand what it means to me. There's a time of a protective action, which is to stop feeling pain or any uncomfortable emotions of that detachment or that closing off of the heart. And this was interesting because I'm talking about also it being a process of trying to go higher on the spiritual level and forgetting that you are here to have a human experience and not here to have the higher experience in the same way. So just that memory of, or that reminder of why we're here and the work that we're doing. And even when you're seeking spiritual path, are you expanding and spiraling upward, or are you constricting and spiraling downward? And being aware of when the mind jumps in and says, well, you're doing the right thing. And it's all a mental exercise, as opposed to the example that Ram Dass used. Is he was trying to analyze how to give the money properly to the lepers. And he was overthinking, and trying to do this whole action of who was the greatest suffering leper and how he should pay that. And then in the end, when he just dropped that and just became intuitive, became in the moment, just went with it, the exercise became fun. And in the end, from a technical standpoint, it didn't matter, as they were a union and they shared everything. To me, that's a reminder of you can't overthink what you can't possibly know. So, powerful stuff.
Dissociation versus
Detachment.
Detachment. Dissociation is distancing yourself from your feelings. Detachment is letting go of the identification with the feelings. I don't know if that's an abstract thing I'm saying here, but one is a pushing away in one form or another, and everybody in this group has enough tools to push pain away, because that's what we've been practicing for a good part of our life. And then, in fact, now we bring in spiritual practices, and then it can even become, if you're not careful, we could start using that. The ego will always co-opt things to try to protect itself from pain. So that detachment is, dissociation is a common thing around that. It's a common thing with trauma. You don't want to be, you're not in your body about it. You're not feeling it. So detachment is, oh yeah, I'm feeling this. And I know this is not me. I shared several satsangs ago where I had a major epiphany, experiential epiphany of that. Where I was carrying certain emotional patterns that I was born into. And it came back up and I realized, oh, and it was because I didn't dissociate. I was feeling it. I was in it. But something clicked and said, oh, this is me. I could feel my core, my center, and that's not me. So that's a detachment. And so I was no longer afraid of this thing swallowing me up. So I could allow it to be present. Be present in what? In the field of my presence, right? Which is the source of light. And then that's how the whole, whatever word you want to give it, transformation and healing, integration is the word I like the most these days. It's because I'm not pushing it away. I'm not getting lost in it. It's right there. Anyone else?
I don't know if this might be switching topics a little bit, but there was a line, the Sufi statement. I loved that. Trust Allah, but tie your camel.
Mm-hmm.
Rafa and I were talking. Rafa, Jeremy, and I were talking about this last night around like trusting that intuition, that intelligence versus instinct, the heart-led journey, but then also the GPS signal that says like turn left here or bridge closed ahead, and like seeing ways to act on our surroundings that isn't like I'm all blissed out and I don't need to deal with the problems of the world. It's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
if I don't tie my camel, someone might steal it or it will run away.
Yeah. Yeah. I spent some time really stupidly in my 20s thinking I didn't need to wear a seatbelt because I was protected. Thank God I'm still here. Just to give you a clue into how far off into la la land I was in my 20s, that trust in Allah and tether your camel is another interesting angle of that, and that is stay grounded, be in your body, be in the experience of being a human, and keep cognizant, keep aware of your divine connection, so it can that's your GPS.
A section of the talk that I really enjoyed was when he was in that community in India and he had his 25 ruples and he thought, oh, I'm going to make the decision about who's most worthy of receiving. When all the while there was some other kind of mechanism at work that I just thought that was, I don't know, a really interesting moment, how we can sometimes have this perception that we have so much power or like divine intuition when really there's something much greater at work behind the scenes that knows a little better than us. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, that is absolutely a great way to interpret that and that whole thing.
I love the way Leah said that.
Yeah.
It's as someone who spends entirely so much time, for too much perhaps, in my brain, in my mind thinking, and one of my big paths is to do less of that. How many times you step back and you realize, I had no idea, or we had no idea, like in our life, as the whole picture unfolds. So it's helped me significantly in situations, well, not exactly like that, as I have been in that situation of giving rupees to lepers, but any situation where you're trying to analyze or make that decision in your life, is remember, you don't know the future. Since you don't know the future, you can't possibly know what's best. So trust. However, there is a reason you have a mind. So don't discount it entirely. But as Eric, you said it many a times and stuck with me, and as was said by Ram Dass again, what is it? The mind is a
It's a wonderful
servant
servant and a terrible master. Right.
I swear, I'm. That's the message I repeat to myself every day. Is that reminder of the mind's place. Don't discount the mind. It's not evil. It's not non-spiritual. It serves a very important purpose, but don't allow it to be your master. And
Right.
that was very much that lesson from that story to me. And how Leah said it, I think, was perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I'm personally working with right now is like watching this judging mind front and center. And when I start actually to pay attention to it and to see how pervasively it is polluting my experience, I'm going through a kind of a little bit of a mortification right now about it, which is a good thing. It's a good thing, but it is deep and it's pervasive. Yeah, it was something that both of you mentioned, Leah and Christina, that I wanted to say something about. Um, well, number one,
Wait, Eric, sorry.
yeah,
Was
go
it
ahead.
mortification over the vastness of your judgment?
Um, Not my judgment of how vast the judging mind overlays onto everything. That it's not the way I was describing it. It's like there are feelings that come through my field, even various thoughts about various things, and I perceive it as inside this field, not inside my head anymore, but inside this expansive field. But there's something about the level of the layer of the judging mind that I'm working with right now or observing that feels it's like it's bigger than the field. And I'm just looking at it with curiosity, which is the way I always seek to go into any of these things, and witness and observe and be aware, right? Because awareness is corrective. I'm not trying to wrestle with it. I'm being, the most interesting thing is when I see the judging mind judging itself. It's recursive in nature in that way. And if I were to be identifying with it more than I do at this point, it would be me judging myself. But the thing that's allowing me to work with it at the whatever layer is presenting itself right now is because I don't have that same level of identification with the mind anymore. It's like, oh, look at that. There it goes. Now, is that dissociation or or non-attachment? It's this is definitely a non-attachment. It's an identity shift. I mean, I've been working through that stuff long enough. I could tell the difference. It's an identity
I
shift.
think the key is being aware that
Yes,
what you're doing.
that is the key. That's the whole.
Yeah.
That's the great majority of the ball game.
Mhm.
Because as the Buddhists say, awareness is corrective. What does that actually mean? Why is it corrective? Well,
Because you can't correct anything unless you're aware of it.
well, that's one way. Yes, that is true. You have no choice at all if you're not aware of something, then you're in a robotic mode. But there's something even bigger going on at the level of awareness that I'm tapping into. I've been sitting with this. It strikes me as being consistent so far, and it's this. In the beginning meditation tonight, when I said, well, like imagine no more name, no more past, no more future, what's left? And it is basically it's pure awareness. And pure awareness is the infinite, which is to say it's the totality. It's got the infinite intelligence. And when we are in presence, then what it is our attention is in alignment with that which we are, which is this infinite awareness. And the circuits are all lined up, so the energy, if you will, of it can come into the mind in the various emotional layers, et cetera. And it's very powerful, and it kind of realigns. It's an alignment process of the elements of distortions in us. Ram Dass talked about when there's distortions we take birth to, and that was interesting. We take birth into a family that's designed perfectly to bring those distortions out in our consciousness so we get to be in awareness with it, which corrects the field of it. So this is a level of awareness where, in the example you gave, Kim, that's one level of awareness that's a pragmatic thing, right? If you're not aware of that you're driving a car, watch out, right? And that involves us navigating the world and doing and operating within the ego, which is we're supposed to. We're here, or with the ego, through the ego, and that's one level. And this other level, there's no doing. It's pure being, which is infinitely intelligent and infinite power. It's our shared being. So when we come into this level of awareness, aware of being aware, and we can experience our life through this place, then all the feelings, all the emotions, all the distortions that we took birth to work through it's in a sense, it's like the safest place I can be to experience whatever my curriculum is, right? Whatever my karma is, whatever word you want to give it, is in presence. Because this is the source of the light. I am the light. This is what we are when we're in presence. And then, well, what are these distortions? The distortions are areas where the light has been blocked from, in a sense, for one reason or another. But when we are sitting in light as ourselves, and we allow these aspects, whatever you want to call them, objects of consciousness, thoughts, feelings, beliefs, emotions, sensations, into presence, it's the presence which is it's an infinitely powerful, loving, coherent, intelligent field of energy that is stronger than these. When we feel something that is a pain or a suffering, it's just that it's a formation of energy that's out of alignment. It's out of harmony with the master harmony. The master harmony is that which we are, which is the awareness. And then when we're in that space, then there's an alignment here internally to ourselves, and that energy flows the most freely into our life and through our homework, our curriculum, our everything.
And Erica, that's such a deep observation almost in societally, right? Of how many layers people put on themselves of identity.
Yes.
Their familiar identity, their political identity, the social, their career, blah, 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 blah. And so
they're all fictional, by the way.
Yeah. They're who am I, quote unquote. That's usually how people define themselves.
Yes.
And the more layers you have in that external, as you said, that fictional definition, the more suffering.
Yes.
Because if you identify with a certain political belief and things go differently, then you suffer more.
Yes.
And even if things are going your way, you suffer because you're in fear it won't go well in the future.
Exactly.
If you identify with your social values and people who are different could be challenging for whatever those are, all those layers of self-identity came to me a lot in my journeys in Peru recently. Was the question that kept coming to me is, who am I?
Perfect.
And the real I.
Yes.
And you know what? You totally nailed it for me, because I've been chasing that. I've been chasing who am I? I'm chasing I. I'm chasing the real I. I'm trying to find it. I'm looking under every rock, every place I can. Who am I?
Where did I go?
How do you find I? Where is it? And it, of course, becoming an intellectual process. And then you said it perfectly. You'll find I when you're not chasing it. So I always feel like that's an exercise to start peeling back all those layers of identity until there's nothing left. So the reverse of what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
It's very powerful. I'm looking forward to sitting with that in my next meditation.
Good. Yeah. Well, Nisargadatta has that practice, where he says you can't actually define who you are in reality and truth, because if you are the infinite, then any word that you use is less than infinite, right? But he says what you can do, and what is a very fruitful practice, is to look at anything that you think you are and say, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not this, I'm not that. And you just keep going. And as you dismiss it, what's left is the reason why I'm silent is because that's it. Ramana Maharshi says silence is the highest truth, the highest teaching.
I'm wondering.
So it's in the stillness, Yeah, Dylan, you had your hand up.
I'm wondering what we do take responsibility for. I'm not the doer, I'm the vessel. The judgment flows through me. I'm amazed at the how powerful it can be, and it thinks it's the container. Or there's these other, these thoughts, emotions, energies, mood patterns that flow through. Ram Dass is talking a little bit about, I might have misinterpreted this, but like, I'll just kind of witness myself in this animal instinctual form. Oh, there's the tobacco. Oh, look at me smoking this tobacco. I guess I needed that. When it comes to like maybe potentially creating suffering for others, or causing harm, or impulsive patterning that how can I practice this, quote unquote, this, and still I don't know if taking responsibility is the right term for it, but what does that stir up for you?
Mm-hmm. The ego is incredibly shifty and skillful at co-opting all spiritual truths for its own purpose. So going into a witness place, if you're disconnected from your feelings about witnessing something, then that's a dissociation thing. On the other hand, the more you stabilize and center in presence, in awareness, which is a still point. It is really the still point. There's no motion in there. There's no psychological inner. There's no motion in that. It's the center of the center of the center. the more you come either into that or towards that, the more clearly you can feel the quality of the vibration of your actions. The action you're either contemplating taking or that you've just taken. And you could start to feel whether, because the more you are in your own being, the more sensitive and familiar and aware, there's the awareness part again, you are of what your natural harmony, what your natural harmony feels like. And then when you're about to contemplate an action, you could start to feel whether that action is in alignment with the harmony or if it's out of alignment with the harmony. It's really notably different. One feels good, the other one doesn't. I want to clarify that because that's another catchy term, good. Or one feels right and the other one doesn't. One feels in alignment with, when two people are singing to each other, singing, and if they're in harmony or if they're out of harmony, you know the difference. It's that kind of a thing at a feeling level. Did I go anywhere near a useful answer for you?
Yeah, and it feels like that tuning fork develops with practice.
It does.
Over time.
Yeah.
It's been years and years and years of me going on social media and mindlessly scrolling to be able to sensitively feel into the nuances of what that does to my system, and that little ooh, this doesn't feel good, why am I doing this, and the sensations that arise, and yeah.
You just keep going. You just keep doing it. You just keep practicing. And it's a gradual attunement. You're tuning up. That's what you're doing. The other thing that I'll offer about that worked, I would say that it really accelerated for me, that whole process, is when I realized that I can't tune myself up. A guitar can't tune itself. I had to ask whoever it is that made this instrument and plays through this instrument to tune it up. That accelerated the process a lot. Because otherwise, what you have is you have an ego running the show, which has no clue. It itself is fundamentally out of harmony and out of alignment with awareness, with the whole. That's why it keeps causing so much damage. But that's the thing that we're taught we are, and that's the thing that we're taught we have. That thing tells us, I got to fix myself. I'm all screwed up. But it doesn't know what the hell it's doing. It never will. What happens is when you start to surrender to the, whatever name you want to give it, the master tuning fork, I mean, there is a sound of it. The yogis went deep into the center and they brought it back for us. It's called Om. That is the master vibration. And when we're in alignment, we are a harmonic multiple of that master vibration. And that feels good. And it feels right. When we're not, and it's not that it's an all or nothing thing, right? It's like if I'm going into something, I'm operating somewhat unconsciously and I'm in pain and suffering.
You gotta go pee pee and get your bone.
Excuse me? I think we were just talking to somebody else. When that aspect of me is out of harmony with my core, I experience it as emotional pain or suffering. No, if it's out of alignment with my car, I feel it as pain. If my mind starts coming in with its commentary about it, then it graduates to suffering. Right. But once you stop believing that you're your thoughts, and once you stop believing or see through the idea that you're the thinker, then you have a healthy detachment from the thinking process. And now your witness is much more stable because it's not getting tossed by a mistaken identity of the mind dragging you around because you think you're the mind. So that's a good one. That's a good one.
Eric, I wanted to share something that came to me when you were talking about that idea of being kind of in your center. And you mentioned something about like distortions.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that came to my mind as a millennial is how sometimes it feels so hard to find consistency in that feeling of like oneness, in that feeling of like being kind of aligned, because I feel like there are so many pulls in every direction. And there are moments, like really blissful moments, where I feel like, oh, like my life is simple enough that it feels accessible to stay in that alignment, to actually hear whatever that vibration is of that tuning fork. But oftentimes I feel very like disconnected from my peers in those moments, because in order to find that like serenity, in order to be in that alignment, you kind of have to turn off some of the distractions. And this last year, I walked the Camino de Santiago, and yeah, it was I for the longest time, everybody describes it as a spiritual journey, and I couldn't quite figure that out until listening to you talk about that, because my life was so simple on the Camino. All I had to do was get up and walk every day. The distractions, like the need to buy a new product or show up at a certain social gathering or any of like that comparing or peacocking in a way, sort of was eliminated. And the only thing I was doing was listening to myself and those around me and moving in that direction. And it felt so rejuvenating. And it's hard to access that in the society that, I mean, I guess that feels really almost out of reach to like find those moments of, and in the talk tonight, he talks about how he had like a dictator, a dictaphone,
The
and
phone.
like, and all of these
He's
like
dating
tools,
himself.
right? A dictaphone, and like how he even felt that in what 1975 or whatever, and like I mean, multiply that by 100
It's
with
way, way, way more challenging for your generation than it was for ours.
yeah,
It's way, way, way more challenging. However, there's a reason why you were born at the time you were. And the thing that came to mind as you were sharing is because your walk had such a powerful effect for you. What came to mind is actually is like Wendy and I last September, we spent 2.5 weeks in the Grand Canyon. It had the same effect. Everything got simple. The distractions went away. We grounded more deeply into our true selves, and it was just so light and happy. So you have that. We brought that back with us, right? It's like we could step into the Grand Canyon because the Grand Canyon is in us. Allow for the possibility that that was not what you went through there was not an experience in time. It's present right now for you. And then so when you go into your meditations and your practices, Go there if that works for you. No, that's the wrong way of saying it. Bring it here. Allow it to permeate. It's all holographic. Let it permeate the entirety of your experience and more, because it's not the place, it's the vibration. It's the vibration. That's a sacred vibration that you tapped into, that you got drawn to, right? That you were open to, that it worked for you because you're so aligned with it. So as you're going through dealing with the outer world, you're going to do a dance of finding your way to be in the Camino while you're in Trader Joe's.
Yeah, Leah, if I may, as someone who I just, as you were talking, I felt exactly so connected to you. Twice a year, I go to Peru, in the jungles of Peru, and I go off the grid. No communication with the outside world for a week. That's it. And when you described your walk on the Camino, it's exactly that. Life is simple. There's no distractions. And then every time I come back to my regular life, which is full of things, as many of, if not all of ours are, I find that challenging. How do I continue that? How can I be back in that space in what I call the real world? And the only one thing I can add to the description of what Eric just said is find something that you do where you are completely in the present moment and you're in a complete state of joy or at least peace. Whether it's nature with your phone turned off, for me, it's riding my horse. I'm right now, I live in California, but I also live in Nevada. I got a lot of land and I got horses, and just I go off on that horse and time ceases to exist. And there's that moment when I have to be fully present because my horse is still wild. And if I'm not present, I'm going to get hurt. It's happened a few times. There's joy and there's a connection to this animal and being out there. And that moment, for the time I'm there, I get that peace. So I'm sharing my horse story with you because you will have your horse. You will have your Camino in your regular life, because the reason you experience that is to know it's possible. Now it's up to you to figure out how to connect to it. So I just want to share that because I'm on your path. Sister, I totally am on your path. And constantly, how do I continue that? Because obviously I can't ride a horse every day. I have a job and other responsibilities, but to find that space, because that gift was your opportunity. It wasn't like you just woke up one day and ended up on that Camino. You had to plan that. Something happened to get you there, but you had that experience, and it's super powerful. So anyways, I hope that was all right. Just wanted to share a little bit. You really touched me with your words. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, what Christina just said, Leah, that which brought you to the Camino, trust that. Ask that to guide you into how to navigate into this crazy world and stay home in yourself at the same time.
Yeah. And I really appreciate what you offered. I mean, I think we all have a moment where we felt that vibration, like you called it, that sort of like sensation in your body where you're just like, oh yeah, this is what it feels like to be home.
Mm-hmm.
And that vibration exists inside of us. And I love that idea of calling that into those moments where it feels like you're a little bit off vibration, and to have that sort of know that exists eternally inside is a beautiful way to recall.
Yeah, that is it. That's what it all means when it says you find it within. And the more you focus with it and focus on it, the more it will be present for you as you go through the crazy stuff out there. So that you could be in a situation that's very demanding of your attention, but as you've been practicing, it's anchored more and more in you. It will step up to be present for you in those situations. So then what happens is you see the situations as your psycho-spiritual gym. You're strengthening your connection with yourself. So don't be afraid of the world. That's a good one. Don't be afraid of the world. That which is living through you is infinitely more powerful than the totality of this world. And that may be just an idea at this moment as it entered into you, but I have a suspicion there's something deeper there that you know that's the truth. That goes for all of us. Because that's what this is, that's what the craziness of the world is calling through us right now. One, so we could navigate it. Two, so we could be of service to it. This is not a drill. I say that every time we come together. This is not a drill. Okay, lovely folks. I love our conversation. If I don't stop myself, I'm going to take us all to sleep. Let's sit quietly for a little while here. Not too long, but enough to adjust. Allow that core vibration into awareness. It is awareness, but it's deeper than the word. The truth of what we are is wordless. So let's just drop into it and be present with it, with us. And again, for now, let go of the name, let go of the story, let go of the world, and just rest in this. Hmm. Noticing this place that you're in right now. Take a moment and notice where in your mind you tend to put the future. Is it in the left? Is it in the right of your space? Notice where that tends to be in your insides. And take this presence now and imagine it can just flow from your heart out through your hands, out into that place where you tend to hold the future. And however it appears, coming across as a color or a feeling or a field or whatever it is, just let it wash through that place. And while you're at it, notice where you tend to hold the past. And let it wash in there too. And just notice how the access to that which you call the future and that which you call the past is really only here now. And as you're in presence, let it just go right through the entirety. Because presence is attunement. And from right here, it just flows through it all, attuning, aligning, all aspects of what we call us. And as you go out from here until we meet again, notice how the awareness just keeps showing up for you all over the place in surprising ways.